Good morning, everyone. Welcome. My name is Menachem Creditor. It's my honor to serve as scholar in residence and rabbi for UJA Federation of New York. We bring you Torah and music, blessing, and community every weekday. We've been doing so since March 18th, 2020. Today it is Friday, June 26th, 2028. There's so much to talk about, but let's celebrate the fact that for 6 years, 3 months, and a whole bunch of days, we found each other to learn Torah and to say good morning every single weekday morning. Adele, Tracy Ann, Deborah, Susie, Tara, Jonathan, and Chana, nice to see you. Daniel, my friend, welcome, Boker Tov. Penny thanks it's broadcast 1578. Hi, John, good to see you. Rose and Patricia, good morning, everybody. George and Judy, Linda and Linda, good morning. Barry and Jerry, Arlene and Jack, Carl, Boker Tov. Hi, Kathleen. Good to see you. Hi, Ashley. Let's take a breath, everybody. A few more people join. Let's sing a bracha for learning. Let's learn some Torah and get ready for Shabbat. Hi, Lisa. Good to see you. Hi, Ron. Barbara, good to see you. It's good to see you. And Deborah, thanks for sharing, just letting everybody know that you attended a bris for a baby whose name is Moish yesterday. You wrote, may he be blessed always. Amen. Let today's Torah be in honor of that sweet baby. This is a double Torah portion, Chukat and Balak, and one of the things that we have not mentioned from this very dense and narrative-filled section of Torah is that in this week's Torah portion we witness the death of two greats, because among the things that we see happening throughout the book of Numbers is rebellions, but that is ultimately also described in a neutral way as a change in leadership, or a possible change in leadership. And the stability of leadership is very important for a community. What we today call the institutions of the state. Even when we disagree vehemently with decisions being made, what holds society together is that there is an authority holding it together. In fact, we learned this in Pirkei Avot, that says you have to pray for Shlom HaMedina, for the peace of what we today call a state, but they would probably have called a kingdom or the authorities. Why? Because if we don't have those things in place, neighbors will swallow each other whole. There would be anarchy or chaos if there isn't that kind of rule keeping and enforcement. It is obviously a very complicated thing given the rise of nationalism all over the world, and certainly the way power has been used to disenfranchise vulnerable minority populations here in the United States and many other places in the world. The use of power is a very important conversation, but knowing that we need there to be a central kind of authority is also important. The rabbis understood this, And that quote that I just shared a moment ago, to pray for the welfare of the state, that was offered under Roman occupation of ancient Israel. The rabbis did not wield authority themselves, but they knew that the rule of law, as complicated as it can be, is also a saving power. It needs to be nurtured and challenged sometimes, but also revered and protected. And one of the reasons I bring this up right now is because we are entering a period of time where we'll be celebrating, at least in the United States, the birthday of independence of the United States. Our 250th anniversary happens on July 4th. And what an important moment for America, for the idea of America. My grandfather, of blessed memory, fought in the army during World War II. My sister, my amazing teacher, is a chaplain, lieutenant commander, rabbi, union accreditor in the U.S. Navy. And while celebrating the country is not only about pointing to the military, both of them are fighting for ideals. My grandfather fought for ideals, and my sister fights for ideals alongside countless other young women and men and older women and men who know that the ideals are worth defending. And you and I can challenge policy decisions. That is the right of a free society. But to understand that a free society is also worthy of protecting. I remember something that happened many years ago. I was a rabbi in a community that did not have an Israeli flag out. And for Yom HaAtzmaut, for Israel's Independence Day, I brought out the flag and I put it in the lobby. And it was a community that wasn't used to those things. I brought it out, and I was expecting pushback because it was a new presence in the synagogue. And instead, what I heard from many people, especially those who knew our history, was appreciation. It makes me so proud to see this flag here. What they weren't saying is, I agree with all the decisions being made by those in authority in that country, in our homeland. They weren't saying that. And they weren't saying, I disagree with everything being said by those in charge of the state of Israel. What they were saying was that symbol means something important to me as a Jew. The flag over my shoulder, on Facebook, it's right over my shoulder and here. Now on Instagram, you can see it too. That flag doesn't mean agreement with policy. It means I believe that there is something noble being aspired to that began with the birth of our homeland again. The United States is clearly a different conversation, but 250 years ago, a new experiment in self-governance began. And it has had ups and downs, but what a fascinating way to wield power in the world as a democracy, to retain the rights such that religion cannot be imposed on citizens and residents, to see in the best moments of our country what it is to be a refuge for those who are downtrodden, as Emma Lazarus famously wrote and has been inscribed on the base of the Statue of Liberty. One of our daughters, a daughter of Am Yisrael, wrote language of the weary, seeking refuge in our harbors. And when we look at example after example, what America can stand for, could stand for, and many times has stood for, is incredibly important to stand up and champion. I say all of this in the context of Chukat-Balak, and let me place it in context. Because the generation of leaders that is still present from the days of the Exodus from Egypt is Moses, Aaron, and Miriam. Moses, Aaron, and Miriam, and everyone else has died in the desert. They are the three greats from the greatest generation. And that's one way of looking at it. The other way is saying the generation born in the desert is the great generation. And we needed a transformation of consciousness in order to be able to defend ourselves. But it is also possible to look at this a third way, which is that that generation was great, and this generation can be great. And greatness is a trajectory that has its ups and downs. And nation states are not worthy of worship, but they are ways of distributing good ideas. I think about this often because what is the deep value of any group, of Am Yisrael? Is the purpose of being a family, being the family? Is the purpose of being a nation, having a nation? Or, in Jewish terms, is the purpose of being called, as Avram Avinu, Abraham our ancestor was, is the purpose of being called so that we can heye bracha, as he was called, so too are we, to be a blessing. If all we are about is self-preservation, and of course we have to also be about that, but if all we are about is self-preservation, isn't that inadequate to the mission that we've been called to accomplish as Am Yisrael? And please God, God shed God's grace on this complicated country that is about to celebrate 250 years, because the legacy hasn't been written yet. We are in a moment of deep and toxic polarization in the United States, but the ideals of the country have not changed, and there are moments where they peek through. There are lots of things to point to, but instead of getting lost in the details and instead of mentioning policies that will likely be places of worthy disagreement, our ancestors did not give up faith in the United States. I am a fourth and fifth generation American. My ancestors could never have imagined the good that UJA, and therefore, since I'm part of the Army of Angels, we get to do in the fabric of American society, to bring together sisters and brothers of different faith, to celebrate our Judaism in public, to defend ourselves as we must, and to try to continue to build this country so that it can be a force for good. And yes, of course, many moments in American history make that complicated, but the greats are not in the past. The greats are also today. Miriam and Aaron die in this week's Parsha, and we hear in advance about the death of Moshe. What hope is there possibly going to be with a people that is always grumbling, always in rebellion, always engaged in what we would today call toxic dispute? We have the three recognizable figures, Miriam, Aaron, and Moshe, and I'm imagining there are those not only who read the Torah today, but who lived in those mythic moments and said, we're never going to make it without them. And oh my God, we just lost two. What happens when Moshe's no longer here? The future looks dark. What we thought was a promise is no longer. What do we do now? And that kind of doubt and fear is fine, because it means the future matters, and we worry because we care. We worry for ourselves, we worry for our children, we worry for our children's children. But what we are called to do, and this is the best of Jewish identity and the best of American ideals, what we are called to do is not just worry for self and for our children and our children's children, but also worry for our neighbors. The twin strands of American identity are the pioneering, rugged, pull yourself up by the bootstraps individualism, which of course only works for those who have boots to wear, and only who have been encouraged by society to pull themselves up. That's not how this has worked. And the great New Deal that was forged during the era of the Depression and post, in order to build up a mutually obligated society, social security, helping the vulnerable, recognizing that capitalism unchecked leaves so many people impoverished and in danger, in squalor. That's not what America is. The mutual obligation of neighbors is the best of America. But the only way that happens is if those neighbors know each other and can count on each other and have a government that reminds them of their ideals. And because of the way America has been established, we have the chance to raise up new generations of greats who hold those ideals sacrosanct. Moses was a message of the past, and he both had the privilege of growing up in Pharaoh's palace and the recognition that he came from a vulnerable minority population. He was a strange and important hybrid. His Israelite sisters and brothers did not recognize him at first. Egypt eventually did not recognize him. He traveled up the mountain and came back glowing from the encounter with God, and so people couldn't be near him. That shouldn't be what we look for. Some revered, removed, untouchable, and unrelatable authority. No. What we need is to remember that no matter our humble origins, and no matter our mortality, which is the point of this parsha, no matter how complicated our community is and the inner disputes that we manage to always generate, no matter all of that, we, by which I mean you and me, wherever you are in the world, for a moment, let me speak with my son Moshe, who's at the grocery store in Tel Aviv, but specifically to those of us who live in the United States. Let's find our way toward each other again. And let's remember that these shores are not only deserving of our protection, but are also deserving of enormous gratitude. Checks and balances, free speech, freedom of assembly, as complicated as all of these things are and always really were, no matter the worst parts of our history as it continues to be written, there are great parts of this history we get to write. Miriam and Aaron die. Moshe's mortality is absolutely explicit here. So the question these two parshiot and this moment ask us is, what comes next? Friends, what comes next? And that is so up to us, not as individuals, but as a group. Patriotism, as Mark Twain says, love of country always, love of government when deserved. Let's be worthy of raising up deserving leaders, making sure to amplify the best of their language, their hearts, their work, and perhaps to be those leaders ourselves. Because Miriam and Aaron don't live forever. Moses doesn't live forever. Neither will we. Our role in this moment is to take up the mantle that's been handed to us and to do so with aspiration and faith and conviction, not abandonment and fear in the corner of our eye always. Faith and determination. That's a kind of patriotism that leaves no one behind. It means care on a national level. So, when July 4th comes around, maybe we'll revisit some of these ideas. But let's remember what a beautiful thing it is to be a neighbor, a good neighbor, and to know that a nation at its best is all about that. So, let's take a breath. Send our hearts to the east. Let's sing. Kol hon balevav pnima nefesh Yehudi homia ulefatei mizrach kadima ayin letzion tzofia Olo avda tikvateinu התקווה בת שנות 2000 להיות עם חופשי בארצנו ארץ ציון וירושלים להיות עם חופשי בארצנו ארץ ציון Virushalayim. Am Yisrael Chai. Shabbat Shalom, friends. See you on Monday.